The next team is Polar Voyager with the title Development to Phased Application of Polar Code for Non-Solar Vessels. Please welcome Team Polar Voyager.
Thank you for introducing our team. We are Team Polar Voyager. We will start our presentation about the developing for the application of phased polar code for non-solar vessels. Thank you.
Honorable Secretary General of IMO, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and pleasure to introduce our proposal for developing phased applications of polar code for non-solar vessels for prevention of polar water accident. Our proposal for Team Polar Voyager consists of background, problem, solution, and lastly, conclusion. In the background, we'll focus on why IMO polar code is needed, what the hazards of polar navigations are, what the definition, history, and configuration of the polar code are. Due to global warming, polar glaciers are melting down. In particular, the minimum extent of summer Arctic sea ice is declining year upon year as much as 10% per decade. And the thickness and concentration of the multi-year ice are also reducing, enabling more access to new shipping routes and a tap into vast natural resources deposits. As shown in the graph, over the past 40 years, the vessel traffic in polar waters has doubled. Polar waters have many dangers, such as icing, low temperatures, the failures of navigational electronic equipment in high latitude, the lack of experience of the seafarers, and lack of emergency equipment. Originally, the countries that have polar waters off their coasts, such as Finland, Canada, and Russia, each had their own rules and were operating polar waters to their regulations. As a result, implementation of a common regulation around the world is more essential than ever. In response, IMO adopted Polar Code with the help of pole states and the IOCs. The aim of Polar Code is to provide for safe ship operation and the protection of polar environment by addressing risks present in polar environments and not adequately mitigated by other instruments of the organizations. And also SOLAS, MARPOL, and SHW, which are the conventions of IMO, also specify the part of Polar Code that meets the objectives of each agreement. Polar waters to which Polar Code is applied refer to two poles, Antarctic and Arctic waters. This figure shows the maximum extent of Antarctic area and maximum extent of Arctic respectively. The Polar Code consists of Part 1, including SOLAS Chapter 14, and Part 2, including MARPOL Annexes 1, 2, 4, and 5. Based on the background described earlier, we focus and we explore the problems with the non-SOLAS vessels which operate in polar waters but is not covered by the Polar Code. SOLAS vessels operating in polar waters are built appropriately for safe navigation guided by the Polar Code. If the accidents occur and is placed in an urgent and dangerous situations, proper countermeasures are taken according to the Polar Code. But how are the non-SOLAS vessels operating in polar waters are prepared? Are non-SOLAS vessels not in a critical and dangerous situation? The non-SOLAS vessels are defined as 1. Ships were war and troop ships. 2. Cargo ships of less than 500 tons gross tonnage. 3. Ships not propelled by mechanical means. 4. Wooden ships of premium build. 5. Pleasure yachts not engaged in trade. Lastly, fishing vessels. As you can see, this statistic shows that about 70% of the vessel accidents occur at sea each year are accidents involving non-SOLAS vessels, fishing vessels, which means non-SOLAS vessels. The accidents are increasing year by year. This indicates that the situation needs to be taken consideration seriously. This data, which was presented in MSCC 96/24/7, is actually a measure for the accident rate of fishing vessels in polar waters. Accident caused by non-SOLAS vessels, other than fishing vessels such as yachts, have become a huge concern. This is the card that New Zealand supported their claim that the safety measures for non-SOLAS vessels are in very urgent need. As the severity of the problem becoming bigger in the MSCC meetings, New Zealand also strongly insisted for the safety measures on the grounds that non-SOLAS vessels are experiencing an increase in accidents in Antarctica. The next presenter will analyze the solution of the problem that we would like to solve.
This is our solution to ensure the safety for non-SOLAS vessels in polar waters, which is becoming global issues. As shown in this picture, the non-SOLAS vessels are at the same risk compared with SOLAS vessels. But in the case of safety measures, every focus is set on SOLAS vessels. Safety is a paramount issue of IMO, and we should remind that incidents involving non-SOLAS vessels can also result in oil spills. Therefore, adequate safety measures are in urgent need for non-SOLAS vessels operating in polar waters. Since the current Polar Code is designed to focus on SOLAS vessels, there are many real challenges to apply directly to non-SOLAS vessels. Therefore, for these reasons, with Team Polar Voyager, we would like to propose that phased application of Polar Code for non-SOLAS vessels. We would like to the solution that might be applied in phase 4, phase 1 to phase 4. We would like to use the solution that might be to apply chapter 1 to 12 of Polar Code of part 1A. First and foremost, in phase 1, the mandatory disposition of PSC, Polar Ship Certificate, PWM, Polar Water Operational Manual, and the utilization of Polaris should be recommended. And this covers chapter 1 to 2 of Polar Code. Polar Code stipulates to carry out operational assessment what is containing information necessary for operation in ice waters, considering the extreme spatial environment and various risk factors such as low air temperature, ice, high latitude, and possibility for abandonment onto ice or land. PSC is a certification that classifies ships in ice waters as A, B, and C depending on ice class, and it shows the operational ability and ship design and facilities in ice waters. PWM, Polar Water Operational Manual, is a supplement to PSC and should include a collection of risk-based operational procedures specific to polar environment. Polaris stands for Polar Operational Limit Assessment Risk Indexing System, which is harmonized methodology for operational limitation in ice waters. And also, Polaris can be used for voyage planning or decision-making in real time on the bridge with a risk index outcome, which is indicator of assessing particular area, whether safe operation will be possible or not. Phase 2 and 3 especially deal with the solutions for fishing vessels among non-SOLAS vessels. As shown in the previous statistics, solutions to fishing vessels is mostly urgent, and phased revision of Polar Code for fishing vessels in polar waters must be put in place firstly. Phase 2 is about a recommendation that the enforcement of training for officers in charge of navigations and the deployment of radio communication facilities which are able for the relatively fast introduction and application need to be compulsory. Currently, seafarers of all SOLAS applied vessels are prescribed to complete certain training under the Polar Code and STCW Convention. It should be changed from onboard ships to onboard ships including fishing vessels of Polar Code 2015, Part 1A, 12.2 to apply to navigators of fishing vessels in polar waters. All SOLAS compliant vessels must be required to carry Global Maritime Distress and Safety System, GMDSS, to cope with possible distress and make safe communications. In SOLAS, GMDSS also divides the sea into 4 sections, A1 to A4, and as shown in this figure, and it defines the essential mounting equipment required for each area. Fishing vessels operating in polar waters also need to be required to carry GMDSS device in accordance with A4 regulations. The next presenter will discuss the remaining solution and conclusion of problem that we would like to solve.
In page 3, it deals with the complete application of Polar Code for fishing vessels. This covers chapter 3 to 8. Page 3 especially applies to the design of vessels and the installation criteria for devices when the items mentioned above have been fully conducted. However, there are many problems in applying the existing standard directly to existing fishing vessels. Since the whole design and criteria for machinery and equipment are set to focus on SOLAS applied vessels. Therefore, we would like to suggest that this proposal should be adopted as an urgent agenda of IMO, and the working group should be made and analyze this issue while referring to the Torremolinos Protocol and Cape Town Agreement, which are created with a focus on fishing vessels installations, so that the Polar Code can be applied step by step. In page 3, these 3 points should be worked out first before the complication of Polar Code for fishing vessels. Firstly, the work for icing allowances for stability based on regulation of Torremolinos Protocol 3/A ice accretion should be carried out. Secondly, the work for reduction of formation of ice and icing allowances for stability for fishing vessels for fish operating 20 meter and operating length on code of safety for fishermen and fishing vessels should be taken place. Finally, the workage of a design, construction, and equipment on voluntary guidelines for small fishing vessels operating in polar waters. Remaining non-SOLAS vessels, except the fishing vessels, may have other difficulties on working page 4, as there are no separate agreement for these vessels, such as Torremolinos Protocol and Cape Town Agreement. However, based on precedent in the preceding page 1, 2, and 3, the working group will be also able to take appropriate action for remaining non-SOLAS vessels. We will give you our conclusion on our team Polar Voyager proposal. Page 1 discuss the deployment BSC, BWM, and Polaris, which can be applied immediately to all ships. Page 2 deals with the deployment of training for navigation officers and communication facilities for fishing vessels, which account for the largest portion of non-SOLAS vessels accident in the polar. Page 3, we apply to remaining parts such as design, structure, and installation of the fishing vessels. If the solution applied to this point in page 4, the working group should work to find the solution on remaining non-SOLAS vessels. Last but not least, as we are all aware, the paramount mission of IMO is maritime safety. However, many non-SOLAS vessels operating in polar waters are exposed to risk without any safety measure without being subject to the polar code. And this results in the severe accidents and losses in various aspects, such as human life, resources, and environment. Therefore, we urgently need to make safety measures sure for non-thrust vessels operating in polar waters. This proposal would be a commitment to IMO Strategy Action 6 and a practical step toward the goal shared by IMO member states of improving safety of all ships operating in polar waters. Thank you for paying your attention on our team proposal.
Thank you very much. Well done. If you have any questions, please raise your name plate. Yes.
First, my comments, my information for you. The solar vessels or non-solar vessels are not official words. Official words are solar ships. So there is, you cannot use solar vessels at IMO. That is my information for you. And my question is that, what was the result of discussion on the input paper by New Zealand? Because from your presentation, you told that New Zealand proposed and they identified urgent need for non-solar ships amendment or the amendment on non-solar ships in polar regions. So, is there any progresses from their proposal or not? If not, what was the reason for that? Why there was no progresses from the discussion on the topic?
Firstly, this delegation would like to express our sincere gratitude for your inquiry on our proposal. Basically, the New Zealand proposed the proposal as our presentation from the 97th meetings of MSCC. From that time, MSCC continued to develop, continue to have a
Discussion?
yes, sorry.
Don't worry. Take your time.
The MSCC, the Maritime Safety Committee meeting, discussed concerning the MSCC is aware of the seriousness of the non-SOLAS convention applied vessels for the risk causing the accidents in polar waters, and start to discuss the solutions for developing phased applications of polar code as our proposal. And in the 101st meeting of MSCC, their MSCC still is planning to apply Chapter 9 to 10 of Polar Code to non-SOLAS vessels. Is this answer okay for your understanding, sir?
Okay, so we will move to the next question. Swiss cheese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, with Team Swiss Cheese would like to express our sincere gratitude for introducing a phased application of Polar Code for non-SOLAS vessels. However, this delegate would like to express our concerns in relation to these proposals that if the phased application of the Polar Code is applied to non-SOLAS vessels as Team Polar Voyager proposed, how the compliance of your proposal can be verified. Thank you.
Firstly, thank you for Team Switches for such precious inquiry on our proposal. In response to your inquiry, we would like to say that basically the responsibility for safety management has given first in the order of ship owners, flag states, countries that make port calls, and lastly, port state control. And according to Resolution A 119 Act, the port state control is only applicable to ships belonging to conventions such as SOLAS and MARPOL conventions. And also codes such as polar codes do not pertain to the requirement of inspection for port state control, because even though the codes are related to the SOLAS convention, but it is not basically a convention. So therefore, the fishing vessels, the non-SOLAS vessels such as non-SOLAS SOLAS convention applied vessels cannot be the requirement of inspection of port state control, even if our proposal is adopted and the polar code is applied to non-SOLAS convention applied vessels. Therefore, the supervision of compliance of the requirement of polar code has conducted by the flag state control. So if the non-SOLAS vessels passes through the Arctic routes, the 8 Arctic nations are in charge of checking in compliance of the regulations of the polar code, and mainly checking the seaworthy of the vessel in polar waters. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I have one more
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
statement for the question
Yep,
of the judge? This delegation had made a statement that the MSCC is planning to apply Chapter 9 to 10 of Polar Code to non-SOLAS convention applied vessels currently. However, the reason why this delegation, our team, Polar Voyager, are willing to propose this purpose as phase 1 is deployment of PSC, PWM, and Polaris. This is why I like to invite new speaker for helping your understanding. Thank you.
Good way, yeah.
Thank you. In addition to helping your understanding, our proposal developing for application of phased polar code for non-SOLAS vessels, the points of our proposal is the solution, which is the relatively fast introduction and application, because currently, as you mentioned and as we mentioned in presentation, in MSC meeting is planning to apply polar code for non-SOLAS vessels, but it's consuming time. It's consuming time. So our proposal is for apply to fishing vessels, which is most severe problem in non-SOLAS vessels. And then in phase 4, we would like to propose that working group should discuss the remaining non-SOLAS vessels except fishing vessel. Thank you.
Yes, please. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for your valuable presentation and proposal. I was impressed with your phased approach to apply the regulation. And you mentioned already the major non-SOLAS convention vessels that are operated in polar waters are pleasure yacht and fishing vessels. I think it is important that the Cape Town Agreement should be mandatory convention. So my question is that, do you have any idea how to accelerate the Cape Town Agreement to be taken effect earlier? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you for in response to your question. As we already mentioned in Cape Town Agreement, already have some regulations for fishing vessels, but the reason why Cape Town Agreement is not valid is because of refusing of from developing countries, and as you mentioned, the solutions for applying Cape Town Agreement earlier is it can be perfect solution if it is possible. But we, our team, Polar Voyager, believe that, as I mentioned before, the solutions, which is the relatively fast introduction and application, is in urgent need for non-solar vessels and fishing vessels, especially in fishing vessels. And therefore, lastly, we strongly require that our proposals will be definitely be a minimum standard for navigators of non-solar vessels in polar waters.
Sorry, but time is up, so.
So can I one more?
Okay, yeah, okay. Very aggressive.
In addition,
I like it.
non-SOLAS convention applied vessels have the same risk compared to SOLAS convention vessel. So these delegations propose that make a focus on the problems and the consequences by the non-SOLAS vessels causing oil spills in polar waters, and the debris and hook and nets will be the big threat to marine lives. So therefore, and also this element can be the good reason for the polar states to be forced for developing countries to adopt the Cape Town Agreement or Polar Code to non-SOLAS convention applied vessels. So we hope our answer will be helpful for your understanding of your inquiry. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we should send them over the world to marketing for Cape Town Agreement. Yeah.